can you give a little introduction about yourself, what you do in your company?
Let's see. Yes. So I'm Michele Smith. I own M Communications Inc. in MCOM Publishing. Started back in 2008. And I head up the roles of publicist, publisher, and a professional writer. So I do everything from a writing standpoint, from ghostwriting books to editing to proofing, although most people don't need proofing. It's a little bit more extensive than that. And and then from a publishing aspect, I work with my team to develop covers, the spine of their book, the back, all the way from start to finish to market that book from a PR perspective. From public relations or media relations, I get my clients on TV and radio, and newspapers, and in print. I've been on several shows myself, including Rachel Ray and XM Radio and CNN. I could care less. I'd rather get my clients on. I'm like the behind the scenes, let me talk to the producer type of person. Put my clients on TV. And then let's see, my team does the graphics and website, but we've done full-blown marketing since 2008. So a lot of startups, from all the way from logo to national television. But my passion really is doing media relations. I love writing really strategic press releases. I like going in for the kill, for lack of a better word, and just getting a reporter on the hook, booking a spot, prepping my client, getting them on. And it's a lot of fun for me. I'm very picky about who I take on as clients, because I want win-win situations, and I've had major corporations just throw their pocketbooks at me, and I've said no. So I'm boutique-y, and it's been fun. And most of my clients they're from here to the East Coast. So I drink a lot of coffee. I don't sleep. My background is I have a bachelor's degree from Chico State in political science. I was going to be a lawyer. And I was the only person in the state school that got into McGeorge School of Law. And then I realized after a year, because this was the only law school I was on scholarship at, that I'd be in $100,000 in debt, living with my dad and making not that much money. So I decided to quit my job, or quit law school, and I popped down to San Diego because I want to live at the beach. And I went beach hopping and worked for .coms for several years. And I got into the real estate field. And then, that crashed. But I was running major marketing departments for Shea Homes and KB Home. And then after that, I took a job on the architecture firm. But if the real estate markets crash, obviously they're not designing houses. So I basically, that's when I quit my job. I quit my job right before I had someone come up to me, women entrepreneurs. I basically got on the Rachel Ray show. I had a friend from World News want to interview me about being a new mom, and I just let my hair down, said, you know what, you don't sleep, and I'm commuting hours a day. And it was just, and she was laughing so hard. So, by the way, I'm a producer of the Rachel Ray show. We want you on. So around this time, I met this woman. She said, how did you pull that off, and why are you working for someone else? So I'm stewing about this in New York, and I came home, gave my employer 6 weeks notice, and I quit. And he was actually my first client back in 2008. So that's
way.
That's my story. That's my story. So I've been working at home ever since. I did have I had an office for a couple of years in El Dorado Hills, and my webmaster and the graphic designer are my best friends. They're amazing. And we have more fun at our office. It was basically romper room on Thursdays. So we had our clients over, and we had a huge kitchen. So we make dinners, and we go to a nightclub next door that was one of our clients. And it was so much fun. But the reality of it is, you don't really need an office and a huge lease to do your business. And so they ended up having a baby, and so we're all working remote, and I've been ever since. And it's kind of nice. So that's kind of my random rambling about me.
So basically you do everything.
Yeah, well, mostly I focus really on the publishing and the PR. The writing and the PR is kind of my forte. I could barely draw a smiley face, so that's why I have a graphic designer. And then my webmaster, he handles everything from, he's so technical and awesome, but he handles everything from website development to Facebook ads, everything social media, and he explains things in very small words. So I'm the one with tech issues 24/7. He's the first person calling me saying, did you try to update your website again? Don't do that. So he's kind of my go-to, and my computer crashes, or I installed a plugin, and then all of a sudden my homepage is gone on my site. So for me, it's just publishing and in the PR part of it.
Since you're going to be inspiring many, many young women with this interview, who has been your inspiration or your role model when you first started as an entrepreneur?
Wow. Actually, I have a really interesting answer to that question. It's my dad. I know it's not a female entrepreneur, but I worked with someone who was very savvy when I first started out. She was fantastic. And, but what happened was after being in business for 6 months, my dad was very against me quitting my corporate job. Very like, what are you doing? 6 figures, economy's tanking, not smart, not smart. And I just kind of stuck with it. And after 6 months, like I remember when I was in college, I was reading about a corporation in my Econ 1 class at 8 o'clock, which I never recommend taking college classes at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so my dad says, oh, by the way, I started Grinnell. So my dad ran like a major like Microsoft computer company in Silicon Valley and just didn't say a word to me because he wanted to see if I'd sink or swim. So that's my like probably one of my he's my inspiration. But for female entrepreneurs, it'd definitely be Adrienne Graham. She's amazing. She's had a radio show in the East Coast for years. She used to write for Forbes, and she's probably she's the biggest powerhouse that I know. But she was a huge inspiration to me, like starting out, definitely.
Wow, that is an insane story. I've never heard anything like that. So do you work with a business coach or a mentor now, or is your biggest role model still your dad?
Right now I have a team. I have 2 teams. So I have my team to bounce questions on. So my webmaster and my graphic designer, Violet, she's fantastic. And so they have their own special skill sets, as do I, but they have the whole marketing brain. So it's great if the 3 of us get together and we could like chat about marketing for hours, because like it's like someone has an idea here, they have an idea there. So there's that. And then from the PR standpoint, I believe that like everyone can play in the sandbox nice together. So I'm actually friends with some pretty top entrepreneurial women. Heather Atherton, for example, Atherton PR. She's been an inspiration for me like for years. And the woman doesn't drink like tequila, but she knows more about tequila than anyone I know because she's done so much restaurant PR. But she was a really huge help for me when I first started in doing PR for myself versus like hiring an agency to do it, because she walked me through how to use the PR database. She like literally just said, anytime you need help, give me a call. And then we started doing a power group call together. Not so much a mastermind, but I guess just a PR professionals where like we say, hey, I'm stuck with a client. And it's kind of like, oh, I know so-and-so, I'll get them on ABC, or, oh, I know so-and-so, or whatever. So it's turned out to be a very, very collaborative relationship. And then I have one of my good friends works for Fox in Atlanta now, and she always gave me the behind the scenes in Sacramento on the media. So it's not only it's like funny, but she was also very educational in the aspect of how it works to be on television and what goes on from a publicist perspective on how to do it. So I reached out to those resources, and it's always been a 2-way street, because they'll come back to me and say, hey, I'm having this issue with a client, or well, Fox would just call me and say, I've had a nightmare like TV thing. Just don't ever send a client on without giving them like XYZ information. So, it's always been a 2-way street for people that inspire me, and we help each other out.
That's awesome. I think sometimes the stereotype of PR, like you said, that everyone doesn't play in the same sandbox. That's really great. You guys have partners in the space.
Yep.
How did you come up with the idea for M Communications, or kind of started out? You said your dad was letting you sink or swim.
Okay, well, he didn't help in the startup process. So basically, I worked with an agency for so many years. So I was on the hiring side. So I knew how to hire an agency and say, hey, I want like a logo for this, or I want a website, or I want whatever. So I knew that aspect of it. But to learn the other side of it, I actually partnered with another woman entrepreneur who said like, okay, here's how you do a contract. and here's how you do this. And she ended up doing my website and everything for me. So that's how it kind of like happened. I always like knew marketing. My dad couldn't help with that. He was like microcomputer chips. I still don't know what he did. He tried to explain it to me one time. He's like, I went to the Pentagon, I did whatever. I'm like, what? Like, okay. So he can't help with like that sort of thing. But I partnered with someone who just basically showed me the ropes, and we ended up, she had her own marketing company, and we ended up like just working on client projects together, because she actually taught me the publishing side of my business. Because before I started back in '08, I never wrote that much. I write for corporate, but it wasn't at the level I do now. So she kind of helped me get started, and then she wanted to go in a different direction. And like, so I was, by this point, I was so busy where it was just kind of like happened organically. Like people, some people, like, for example, with marketing agencies, they want to focus on just tech. And so that was one of those situations where that's really not my thing. So it kind of worked out organically, but she showed me the initial ropes and got everything set up for me. So then when I got to a point where I was taking on clients, I already knew how to do websites and everything else, just from a hiring perspective.
Wow, that worked out so well. So it sounds like that was a pretty smooth transition, but as every entrepreneur knows, there are lots of highs and lows. So what has been the most difficult or disappointing part of entrepreneurship for you?
Gosh. I mean, there's so many benefits. It's not, I mean, it's great because you can make your own schedule, but at the same time, like, you work long hours. So if you have like a situation like last week, for example, some life challenges pop up, like the work's still there. So so you basically have to keep yourself very just on point and scheduled. And if you have like, I want to go goof off with my son's play, it's like, okay, I'm getting up early in the morning, doing whatever. So I'd say, okay, biggest lows are, I think at the very beginning, I wasn't very good about screening clients. So, and then we go for that shiny little like egg, and all of a sudden it turns out to be a nightmare. And so that was like, I had a couple situations, and nothing like horrifically bad, but I had to learn very quickly to like, okay, that's a great contract, but it's not going to be worth the headache in the long end. So I'd have to say that would be the lows. I never really minded like being on my own island, because like at this point now if I went back to corporate, I would get fired, because like I want to show up wear my pajamas until 10 o'clock in the morning. So I guess I'd say some of the lows were some like, I get really personally invested with my clients. Like I care. I'm not like, okay, cool, here's a paycheck, whatever. So some of the biggest lows were they're just disappointing for me, because I was just like, I thought, okay, great, I'm totally gonna deliver on this, and then it's turned out to be like, just nightmare projects would go out of scope. So now I'm very like, I call it like, what was it called, the scope creepers. I'm very like, well, it's like, here are you get 3 revisions of your logo, or whatever, or your website or whatever. So now I just like plan ahead. The biggest highs for me are when, gosh, like recently it was kind of fun when I did the quarantine cookbook with my son, and he's 12 and now he's 13, but he was on CNN, XM radio. We were on Cameron Hall together. And that's my biggest highs are always when I can get that big of a win for a client. So if I have a client on ABC World News, and that's been, I'd have had more highs over the lows for years. So it's hard to answer. Another low, I'd say one of the biggest lows of entrepreneurship is that I like to go on vacation. And so what I discovered that is that if I don't leave the country, which we can't do right now, people think I'm still available. So I remember at one point, like I went to Hawaii and took my kiddo with, and I had my whole plan. Normally I thought, okay, it's still in the US, I'm just gonna work a little bit in the morning and goof off, whatever, and then work in the afternoons. And what I discovered was that it didn't matter, because people thought, oh, she's online or whatever. And so I'd say that's a low. So again, I guess I could say it's poor planning on my part. Next time, just leave the country.
Some good advice. Just get out of here. When you do have those setbacks or you're kind of stuck, you said sometimes you and the other woman you work with a little can help each other out with clients. What do you usually do when you have a setback?
Oh, I pick up the phone and send them a text or send them a text. It's like if I start to see a setback, like if you can start like getting ahead of any problem in your business, that's the best way. Just tackle it head on. So the second you start seeing something like a somewhat of an issue, or say for example, let's take my tequila PR friend. And again, she's not like a drinker; she just does PR for restaurants. And it's just like, so if I took on like a beverage client, for example, I'd call her and say, hey, I'm not getting coverage. And so it's just all about, building that team around you where you can call when you're having an emergency and they know they can pick up the phone and call you too. Like I have one guy right now who, and I don't know why he's calling me because I'm not a tech person, but he's like, I don't understand the PR database. I have this client, and I'm like, okay, who's a client? Let me pull a list for you. Let me just do whatever. And he's like, oh, he's done author PR. So it's just all about, just trying to like, just build a circle around you that you can just know that you can call, and it has to be a two-way street. And that's the best way to overcome challenges, because I think a lot of people as entrepreneurs like feel that they're stuck on their own island. And most entrepreneurs, like they're all in the same boat. So it's just like, maybe especially now, even with like COVID, it's just like people like, even like the Zoom call. It's like, we did like, for example, even, and I'm rambling, but even my PR group, we all missed each other. So we did a Zoom call for lunch. We all just sat around, ate our sandwiches, and just sat there and chatted. It was super fun. But it's just about building relationships and just having that team to bounce ideas off, whether they're working for you or not. And it just, it's also to keep in mind, like, one webmaster might focus on this, another webmaster might focus on something else. And it's okay to like, reach out to someone who's like been doing this for years and years and years, or have these partnerships. It's an absolute way to succeed, and just stay ahead of it, stay ahead of any problems.
That is a great point. I feel like a lot of people think of entrepreneurship as all alone all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not true. Well, on the other side of things, what has been your most satisfying moment in business?
There's so many. I mean, I have a lot of fun. Like I have fun. Maybe not every day, but like for the most part, I'm having fun every day. I think my most satisfying moment was, the other day I realized, I'm like, oh my goodness, like I've been in business for over 10 years. Like I've been doing this for over 10 years. And I mean, it was some email on LinkedIn from, I forget what company it was. Maybe I shouldn't even say, I know company, I'm not going to say, but it was a huge company. Like, oh, we'd love you for vice president of marketing. And every once in a while, it's like you get this little carrot dangled in front of you, and you think, yeah, I can't show up to work in my pajamas at 10. So that's not gonna work out. So my biggest satisfying moment is that like I started my business it was in 2008. So I mean the market was crashing. It was just a disaster. And I was able to survive that downturn. And then also when COVID happened, like that was another huge challenge, because all of a sudden the news wasn't running like skincare. Like they don't, I mean, well, half my like lifestyle clients, I had to say like, let's put this on pause, because I can't, as much as you want coverage, I can't help right now. Let's just contract on pause. And I pivoted my business. So I figured out very quickly how to take on clients that could help during this situation. So that's another like aha moment. And there's so many. And then I think my other one from just a personal situation was, I've worked with so many authors. Like one of my son's teachers called me one day because he's seen the finished book products and said he convinced a whole class to stay in at lunch hour to start working on their books. These little kids in elementary school had these little books that they all created themselves, and my son was leading the whole thing. I'm just like, oh my God, that's so like, so my business I was inspiring my son, which was completely just, probably the most satisfying thing ever.
When you're starting a business or just being an entrepreneur in general, what would you tell these girls are the top 3 skills to being successful?
Top 3 skills would be find a mentor. Like find a mentor for sure. Someone that you like, you can work with, you feel comfortable with, and not being intimidated. Because people want to help. They absolutely want to help other people succeed. So that's one thing as a skill set. Another skill set is like never be afraid to ask questions. Like if you don't know something, that's okay. And then also don't think you have to do everything, because know your strengths. Like I know I can write, design a logo, I cannot. So definitely don't, and I did this when I first started out too, is like, don't waste your time trying to learn something, because if you think about it from a mathematical standpoint, if I try to build a website, that would be like how many hours of learning, just the hours that I could be spending on billing clients, doing what I love doing PR, versus spending 3 days of unpaid work on a website, because I wanted to do it myself. Like, just absolutely don't do it yourself. And then another thing too is realize when you get, like, just kind of monitor your time. Like you want to have a life outside your business. And then when you realize you start to need help, that's when you need to like look into like websites, even to hire like a contractor, help someone else to like help you out, even if it's an assistant, like 2 days a week. So kind of like just kind of being aware of your time, and then just like you're screaming uncle, reach out, hire someone, because there's several people out there right now where there's contractor websites where people work for like 5 hours a week, and they could probably take smaller tasks off of your plate that you can, again, be playing in a bigger playground what you want to be doing.
Within your small team and in general, how do you address diversity in your workplace?
Well, my team's actually very diverse. So it's actually, I mean, as for addressing, it's never, just growing up in California, it's like, I don't, it's never been an issue it's never been an issue for me, because we had this whole joke at our office, because, my webmaster is Black, my graphic designer is Puerto Rican, I'm like the white person, I'm Italian, and then Sunny's Filipino. And we just, the whole thing would be like, okay, so who's cooking? Like, who's cooking? What ethnicity what are we doing tonight? So it wasn't, I've never, I've never had that issue. So it's always just, I know now it's there's challenging times out there, but, I haven't had an issue with dealing with diversity in the workplace, because, we don't see color, or it's one of those things where we've just always just worked very well together, and all of our clients have been very diverse as well. We've had like Kings basketball players in our office. It was pretty funny that my first time my son saw a Kings basketball player, he's just marveling at how tall like these guys came in. He's just sitting there like, oh my gosh. So I'm probably not the best person to answer that question, because like it hasn't been an issue, and we haven't had challenges in that regard. So I think we're very fortunate.
That sounds amazing. I think you can answer, you've done it. So in your 12 years of your company, do you think the entrepreneurial space has changed from when you first started to now?
I think, well, let's see. As for the space changing, what I'm seeing is that it kind of depends on what's going on in the world, to be totally honest with you. So right now, you have some more startups, but at the same time, you have there's so many different challenges right now. So as for being an entrepreneur, like is in itself, like the same things are there that you need. Like from even a marketing standpoint, you need to have the same drive, you have the same thing, you have to like be 110% committed, because you can't do a full-time job being an entrepreneur. That hasn't changed. It's kind of reacting to what's going on in the world. As a publicist, I will probably be one of the last ones standing, because I've pivoted my business. So in that case, it's just, and that's not really answering your question, but the basic tools on how to do a startup and how to be an entrepreneur are there. It's just how to succeed in this economy and in this world right now. That's what you have to adapt to. So as for the basics, no, but is it the right time to launch a very high-end fashion line? No. I'm like, that's like, you have to put that one on pause. And I work with a high-end fashion designer, and she's the same way. She's reinventing her business too, where she's doing more accessories and everything else. So
If you could go back in time to the founding of your company, what advice would you give yourself?
hmm. Never have a business partner. um, yeah, I would just really, I mean, I wouldn't say that. I would say really look at who you align yourself with. Don't go for like the shiny objects, like, oh, keynote speaker, worldwide speaker. I mean, really be careful about who you partner with. Don't like, just really kind of keep an eye out for yourself, because that's just one way to get overwhelmed. And just, I don't recommend, that's what advice I would give. And then also, I was also taking too much on my plate. So when I started out, like, I was the one doing everything. I was my assistant. I skipped the whole web thing, but I was doing way too many things. And I wasn't also, and again, getting into a mastermind group or getting a mentor, I should have done that in the very beginning. I didn't. I had to learn by trial and error and failure before I thought, okay, I could have like had this group where I could have asked one question, had my answer, because I spin my wheels versus spinning for 8 hours. So I would tell my younger self to stop spinning, pick up the phone, get in a group, just find a group that fits for you, so you have that support system.
Definitely. Sounds awesome. So the last thing today is, it sounds like you have a few of these, so you might have to choose. Can you share
Uh-oh.
a funny story from your career?
Oh, wow. Which story do I tell? Um, well, I will tell a funny story about myself, because that way I'm not like putting anyone else under the bus. I was so when I was on the Rachel Ray show, they were doing a segment about, we had no idea, like, it was me and two other women, and we had no idea what the story, I mean, they didn't tell you anything. Basically, it's like we thought it was about new moms or whatever. And at the end, this is how I learned how TV shows actually work, at least some of them. But at the end of the day, so we're all in Rachel Ray. It turned out to be like women who are worried about their bodies. And all three of us were like, you've got to be joking right now. We're worried about getting to work. We're worried about providing for our family. We're worried about all this stuff. And the whole segment was sponsored by Spanx. And so like, it's like, okay, don't exercise and wear these. I mean, it's like this whole thing. So at the very end of the segment, I literally raised my hand and said, you know what? Basically what I said, well, these two other women, including myself, are more worried about getting to work and sleeping I went off to a point where Rachel Ray and Valerie just like kind of stared, and they said, Spanx for everyone. And they threw it like threw the Spanx out in the audience. And then, the producer kept in my like snarky comment, and then she was no longer at the show anymore. So I felt a little bit bad about that, but I felt from an empowering women standpoint, I'm like, I couldn't care about, I mean, I have a 2-year-old. I'd be like, I got out of bed in the morning, put makeup on. Like, that's like a win. Like, not like, not about whether I need like implants or something. It just wasn't so that's a funny one. That's a funny one about me. But
Oh my
um,
God.
other ones is that, I mean, just like my office was, like I said, it was like romper room. We all worked very hard, but we played hard as well. So I bought this really cool Michael Kors purse when I was in New York, and my graphic designer and one of my best friends like loved it, and literally she would steal my purse all the time. So I would be on a call, she'd walk into my office, grab the purse, walk off, and then she started this whole social media, and she called it Michael. She's like, where's Michael on Facebook? And so this whole thing went, and people started like, I mean, we'd laugh because like people would start following this. Did you take her purse again? Where is it? And then like she showed a picture of herself like in my car. I mean, it was funny to a point where our office started having this whole social media following just based on the purse. Then it got to a point where other people didn't realize how good of friends we were, and that we all talked to each other. And there's this one person that was just, I'm not just trying to get into our group just to kind of pilfer our contacts, which is not cool. It's one thing if you like know someone and say like, hey, do you mind like sending me into her email? This woman was obnoxious. So it got to a point, we'll call her Sarah, and that's not her name. So I'd be like, in one office, Sarah's calling, you're next, Michelle. We wouldn't answer our phones. We just kind of watch everything, just get kind of like struggle around the whole office. So there's like funny from that. And then I guess there's another funny I can tell about our office because it's our group. I won't say the product, but there was a company that approached our team about basically the product was to get rid of like hangovers or any alcohol in your system. So basically, again, thinking about this, like I don't see how this would work anyway. So you could have like 5 martinis, like take a pill, and then you're fine to drive in an hour type of thing.
Oh my God.
So I'm like, so we were going to do a test case study on this in the office, right? And so I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I was the one in charge of taking notes on this new product, wasn't launched yet. And so I monitor like, okay, so-and-so had 1 drink, so-and-so did that. And so we'd say, here's what we did this. And I just followed them around, went to our nightclub after, I'd follow them around, make notes. And I guess this isn't that funny, but they all got really, really sick after they took this thing. And so the next day they called our office saying, so how did it go? And I picked up the phone because I was the only one feeling, and I'm like, I'm like, we're not working with you. I was just went off. I'm like, your product doesn't work. And it makes people think. And I don't know how you got FDA approval on it. So they kind of went, so that's kind of another like funny one. Just the product like gone really bad.
Definitely have not heard of them since or ever.
No, they're not around. I can tell you right now, this was like a long time. They are not around, but I just feel bad for the person who took care of the people that night. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, thank God I volunteered, because I don't mind having a glass of wine. I mean, that's fine. But like, I'm glad I was a note taker. I'm like, glad I volunteered from that. Like the note taker, giving people their breath alcohol. I was like, that was my job. I'm like, thank God, because this was just a whole like, I don't think they ever tested the product out on consumers, or they used some of the FDA. It's the only thing I could think of, but it was just
oh my God.
really bad.
Sounds it.
I'm like, I can't do PR for you. I'm like, no, like, out, not happening.
Oh my gosh. Those were some funny stories.
There's more, but I can't say
Sure.
that I'm not personally involved with. Actually, there's one more. I'll cut myself off. So normally, like, I'm really good about coaching my clients about being on TV, especially if they're nervous, getting prepped and whatever. And I had this one guy who was like super nervous about being on. And I said, no problem. I'll go to it's local. I'll hold your hand, basically go to TV. I'll go to the interview with you. You're going to be fine. Prepped him. And then I watched him during a 5-minute interview, literally lick his lips. I don't know how many times. And this is sitting in the studio. And then I get back and so how'd I do? I'm like, well, you got the content okay. Maybe a little bit nervous. I was just trying nice about it. But I'm going, oh my gosh. So I get back to the office and the producer like calls me. So how do you think that went? And I'm going, because I have the TV stations call me because my clients, they know how to handle themselves on TV. And I'm thinking, oh wow, I'm gonna get blackballed by the station. But she was like super kind about it. They got to a point where like Violet would walk past my office and I'd be sitting looking at my computer doing this. And she's all, are you watching that interview again? She's all, how many times? Well, 37 times he licked his lips. And I sit there and count. She'd be like, shut the laptop. She'll knock it off, Michelle. Stop torturing yourself. So you had one client kind of mess up on an interview. So there you go.
Oh my gosh. Tip of the day, don't lick your lips.
Yes, get media coach. Your tip of the day, get media coaching. It's okay if you're nervous. I was nervous the first time I was on TV. I was in corporate and the vice president called me right before I go on. And I was so nervous saying, we have TV in the design studio. Everyone's watching you, including the president. I'm like, where can I vomit right now? Like I want to like vomit in my purse. And I'm nervous enough. I'm like, thank you for the phone call. That sucks.
Oh my God. Oh my gosh. Well, in addition to that advice, Do you have anything else you want to add to tell these girls?
I would say pursue your dreams. If you love something, just do your homework first, pursue your dreams, talk to someone already in the business, like know what challenges are ahead of you, and then do it. Make a plan and do it. And this goes for, if you're doing this like right out of high school, or you're doing this right out of college, or you're making a career change. Just and then the other thing is put in 110%, because you can't, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you can't go halfway. There's no just sticking your toe in the water, and you just have to either like, I hate to use this quote, but go balls to the wall. Like basically you just go for it and you just don't stop. And startup's going to be tough. It's going to be like a lot of time at first and some sleepless nights, but you get through that part, it is totally worth it afterwards. Like when you can just kind of be your own boss, and I couldn't be managed right now to save my life. Like it's so, so worth it. And at the end of the day, if you're doing something you love, it's not work. Like I'll do work on a weekend because it's fun for me. So basically you can be working for someone else, and making your paycheck, doing 9 to 5, have the same redundant thing over and over again, or you can have fun in your own swimming pool that you created for yourself. So there you go.
Definitely. You embody all of those for sure. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to share this.
Thank you.